Thanks for your comeback TV spoilers. Reveal that Victor's fury doesn't come from a direct confrontation, but from the sensation of being betrayed in silence, kind of betrayal that unsettles him more than any public challenge ever could. In Victor Newman's world, information is power, power is order, and order exists only when everything stays under absolute control. So the moment a secret slips beyond the system, the moment a story leaks through a crack he didn't even see, Victor feels as if someone has pried a brick loose from the foundation of his empire. What makes his anger terrifying isn't shouting or visible intimidation, but the cold accumulation behind his eyes, where he has always believed he can predict every motive and detect every betrayal before it has time to form. He doesn't know that at the same time Nikki is pulling Jack into a dangerous gray zone, while Holden is making a special request and Victor still believes he is standing at the center of the chessboard, watching every piece move according to his will. Across town, Jack Abbott steps into a moment he can't measure with ordinary instinct. Genoa City is always loud with power struggles, but the shock Jack is about to face doesn't feel like the familiar strike of corporate warfare. It carries the scent of truth compressed for too long and suddenly bursting open. Jack understands Victor better than Most understands his calculated cruelty. His habit of building layer upon layer of secrets so everyone else remains outside the door. But Jack also understands Nikki, and he knows she isn't the type to throw an information bomb just to satisfy an emotional impulse. If Nikki chooses to speak, it means she has weighed the risks. It means something has crossed her threshold of endurance, a threat has emerged that she believes only Jack can truly grasp. That realization prevents Jack from staying calm. He is being pulled into a revelation, while also being forced to wonder whether he is walking straight into a trap Victor designed in advance. Because anything tied to Victor can be engineered into a battlefield. Nikki comes to Jack with no room left to retreat, and what she carries isn't simply information, but a piece that makes every connection between Victor and Michael and the deepest secrets feel suspicious. Nikki tells Jack something unexpected, a truth that if placed in the wrong spot could become the fuse for a new war. Behind Victor's secrets lies a chilling reality. Michael Baldwin is holding crucial confidential information, the kind of information that can decide who wins and who loses, who gets pushed to the edge and who is kept inside the circle of safety. Nikki doesn't present it as a simple accusation, because she knows Jack will find the most dangerous meaning on his own. For Nikki, it is a bitter admission. Even in Victor's house, the people labeled most loyal may be standing on a fracture line, and that crack could spread wide enough to shatter everything she has tried to preserve. What forces Nikki to speak isn't just instinct, but a moment she can't pretend she never overheard. Nikki has listened in on a conversation between Victor and Adam Newman, and sometimes only a handful of linesly fragments are enough to expose the true shape of an entire scheme. From that moment on, Nikki begins to see a thread leading toward Michael. She points out to Jack that Michael may be the one who exposed Abbott's closure before the Newman media scandal erupted, and that isn't merely news leaking. If it's true, then someone deliberately released a signal at the most sensitive time, like a strategic diversion, or a way to gain advantage by throwing the other side off balance. Nikki doesn't need to show documents in her hand, because what she is offering is a frightening chain of logic. Certain secrets are being held within Newman, and Michael is the pressure point where those secrets can slip out of Victor's control. Jack receives that information like a man staring at a wall that has just revealed a hidden door. Deep down, he cannot deny a thought that has crossed his mind before. He once hoped Michael might help the Abbott family, at least in a way that counterbalances Victor's brutal moves. That hope isn't naive, it is strategic. Michael understands the law, understands the board, understands Victor. And if anyone is capable of helping the Abbotts stay upright under pressure, Michael is the logical choice. And yet Nikki forces Jack to confront a sentence that lands like a verdict. Michael is still as loyal as ever. Coming from Nikki, it isn't praise, it is a warning. It implies that if Jack has been convincing himself Michael could tilt toward the Abbotts, then Jack may be misreading the situation or seeing only half the truth. But this is exactly where the story reveals the complexity outsiders can't easily touch. What, why, and our fans know, and what makes Genoa City's atmosphere suffocating. That Michael is walking on a double-edged blade. He chooses to earn Victor's trust by appearing absolutely loyal. The kind of man who can handle problems, clean up consequences, and keep every secret sealed. At the same time, beneath the mask of loyalty, Michael is secretly deceiving Victor, not as an impulsive betrayal, But as a betrayal he has justified with a goal. That is the most dangerous kind of deception, the kind the person committing it believes is right. And that belief makes them frighteningly calm, patient enough to wait for the exact moment to strike. Michael doesn't want Victor to know his plan, because he understands that if Victor smells even a hint of irregularity, everything will be over before it begins. Michael knows Victor can't be fooled by surface devotion. Victor reads silence, measures hesitation, hunts for gaps in behavior as a survival reflex. That's why when Victor praises Michael's loyalty during Tuesday's broadcast, it isn't merely recognition, it is empowerment. Victor rewards Michael with trust, and for Victor, trust is something he rarely gives unless he sees a clear benefit. Victor believes Michael is an anchor, someone who will keep his secrets out of the wrong hands, someone strong enough not to tremble under pressure, and smart enough to understand that standing beside Victor means standing beside power. But Victor doesn't realize that this moment accelerates an unseen plan. The more Victor trusts Michael, the closer Michael can get to what he truly wants, the artificial intelligence program. The thing Michael intends to get close enough to steal in order to end this threat. Michael isn't acting for the thrill of victory. He moves like a man persuading himself that taking it will prevent something worse. Whether his motive is protection or salvation, the path he has chosen still turns him into a liar in Victor's eyes. And the most frightening part is that Michael isn't only up against Victor, he's up against himself. When someone chooses to pretend loyalty toward the person they intend to deceive, they are forced to live in constant tension, forced to control every smallest reaction, every unconscious gesture, every pause that could be interpreted as guilt. Michael understands that. He knows a glance that lands wrong, a reply delayed by a second, a hesitation that appears in the wrong place can make Victor ask questions. And when Victor asks questions, it never stops at one. It becomes a hunt, a deep excavation, and Victor will ignore nothing. That is why Michael must appear even calmer, even more reliable, even more flawlessly devoted, in that very perfection may be what triggers Victor's suspicion. Because Victor has always believed that no one is perfect unless they have something to hide. While Jack struggles to rearrange every assumption he has ever made about Michael, Nikki is trapped in a different kind of torment. She isn't only worried about Victor, she is worried about the truth. Nikki knows Victor will explode if he learns she shared secrets with Jack. Because to Victor it is crossing a line, violating the family's code of silence. Yet Nikki also understands that silence is sometimes no longer a moral option, especially when silence allows a threat to grow in the dark. She cannot naively believe everything Victor does is for the family. She has been beside him long enough to recognize that protection is often his most polished justification for control. So when she places Jack in the position of knowing even part of the truth, Nikki also places herself in the path of Victor's rage. She accepts that risk, even if it could crush whatever peace remains in their marriage. Jack, meanwhile, cannot simply listen and do nothing. He is an abbot. He lives by the principle that if information can save his family, it must be used correctly. But correctly in Genoa City is sometimes just a softer word for an unavoidable decision. You choose a side, you choose a moment, you choose who you believe. Jack is pulled into a dilemma where he wants to believe Michael could still be a potential ally, yet must accept Michael could also be a dangerous Hingismion who receives rewards from Victor, while secretly preparing a lethal strike. And the more Jack thinks, the more he realizes the shock isn't Nikki's revelation itself, but what it implies. If Michael truly is deceiving Victor, Genoa City will quake when Victor finds out. And if Michael isn't deceiving Victor, then why does Nikki feel compelled to speak at all? Even if Nikki is only suspicious. Suspicion alone can trigger chain reactions between Abbott and Newman, between loyalty and betrayal, between truth and the story someone wants the world to believe. Through all these layers, Victor remains the most dangerous man in the room because he doesn't need to know immediately. In order to become lethal, he only needs to feel that something doesn't fit. And unfortunately for Michael, Victor has a talent for detecting plots behind his back. That talent doesn't come from vague intuition, but from a lifetime spent in power wars. Victor has been betrayed, he has set traps, and he has escaped traps. He understands the rhythm of treachery, understands that the betrayer must perform, and the longer the performance, the more likely a crack will appear. Michael may believe he is skilled enough to prevent that crack, but Victor has spent his entire life hunting for the smallest fracture. That is why unlucky won't be a random accident. It is the fate of anyone who tries to play both sides against Victor Newman. Michael reaches the most dangerous stretch of his plan. The closer he gets to the artificial intelligence program, the more he needs Victor's absolute trust, and the more he must maintain absolute secrecy. But secret science, Nikki touches it and passes it to Jack, can never remain pure again. It becomes a rolling object, capable of hitting anyone, capable of making noise at any moment. Nikki has done what Victor hates most. She has taken one piece of information outside his control. Jack has become a man carrying a truth that could rupture the balance. And Michael, even if he isn't exposed yet, has been placed at the center of a suspicion forming like a storm front. No one needs to make another move for the tension to rise. All it takes is for them to look at one another differently. For each of them to start guessing how much the other knows, what they are holding, and what they will do if they are pushed into a corner. In the end, the scariest part isn't whether Victor will discover the truth, but when. Michael may be in massive trouble sooner or later once Victor catches the outline of his plan. And that sooner or later is exactly what makes Genoa City feel airless. Because while everyone waits, every compliment Victor gives Michael can carry to meanings, genuine reward, or a test of reaction. Every calm expression Michael wears can be read as guilt. Every step Jack takes after Nikki's confession can look like provocation. And Nikki, the one who chose to speak, will have to live with the pressure that a single small mistake could make Victor turn and see her as a traitor inside her own family. And then, just when they all assume they still have time to arrange things, to calculate, to keep everything at the level of suspicion, a chill begins to spread through the air. Victor may not know yet, but he is starting to notice one detail that doesn't align. One tiny detail, almost invisible, but enough to make him stop and ask who has stepped out of line. And when Victor stops, it isn't because he hesitates, it is because he is locking onto prey. Once Victor starts locking on, the only question left isn't whether Michael can escape, but what kind of punishment Victor will choose when he finally pulls the curtain down while Michael is still trying to take one last step toward the thing he believes he must steal, no matter the cost. Claire Newman steps into the last hours of the year feeling both exhausted and sharply awake, as if she has spent too long in rooms where other people decided what she was allowed to fear, whom she was permitted to trust, and how much pain she was expected to swallow for the sake of someone else's comfort. New Year's Eve should have been a soft line between what was and what could be, but for Claire it feels more like a psychological trial than a celebration. She agrees to spend the night with Holden Novak, yet that agreement is not surrender, and it is not a signal that she is ready to rush into something new simply because she is bruised. Claire's yes comes with a condition, short and sharp like a contract. Holden must follow one rule. It is her way of protecting herself, and her way of reminding herself that she is no longer the woman who can be guided by soothing words or vague promises. Still, the moment Claire manages to carve out a safe perimeter, danger is already waiting on the other side of it. Because Holden is hiding a deadly secretone tied to a murder case in Los Angeles, making honesty nearly impossible and turning every promise he offers, no matter how gentle it sounds, into a risk that could become a lie. Claire is sick of being manipulated, and that exhaustion is no longer a passing feeling, it is a conclusion written into her bones. She has lived through a personal hell in the truest sense. A woman who spent her life under Jordan Howard's control and coercion, trapped inside a web where truth was bent to serve someone else's will, where trust became a noose, and where every attempt to resist was punished in a more refined way. When she finally escaped Jordan, that should have been the end of the darkness. But Claire was not given the luxury of healing in peace. She stepped out of one prison only to land in the middle of the endless new Manabot war, where emotion is stretched tight by power, where everyone has a reason to keep half the truth, and where love is often treated like a front line that can be used. Claire is not only tired because of what happened to Hirsch, is tired because she recognizes the pattern repeating. People keep acting as if they have the right to decide how much she must endure. That is why, when Claire thought she had found something real with Kyle Abbott, she allowed herself to soften just a little, to breathe out after years of holding her breath. She never believed Kyle was perfect, but she trusted something simple at the very least. He would not use her like a move on a board. Then the truth rose like a blade through everything she had begun to rebuild. Claire learned Kyle kissed Audra Charles in France, and what froze her blood was not the kiss alone, but the way Kyle dared to label it a move, a tactic, a calculation, as if betrayal were simply a business cost. As if Claire was supposed to accept hurt as the price of someone else's strategy. In that instant, she saw the same cruel logic she had spent her life running from. People always find a way to justify wounding her as long as they give it a smarter name, a cleaner explanation, a more profitable purpose. And the deepest pain was that Kyle, the one she wanted to trust, pushed her into the role she despised most, the role of the woman expected to absorb damage without complaint. Claire's breaking point does not require loud theatrics, because she has learned that silence can be more dangerous than screams. But when everything finally hits the limit, she reacts with the bluntest kind of clarity, the kind that draws a line in ink instead of pencil. She will feel no regret at all after throwing a drink in Audra's face recently. Because for Clare, it is not just a flash of jealousy or pride, it is a reflex of self-defense. A bodily declaration that she will not stand still while other people mark territory on her life. She also will not apologize for doing what is best for herself, even if Kyle cannot handle the fact that she is choosing her own path on her own timeline. Clare no longer feels obligated to soothe other people's discomfort to be seen as right. She has spent too many years living inside other people's standards. Now she chooses the only standard that still matters, the one that keeps her alive and preserves her self-respect. In that climate, Holden Novak's invitation appears like a newly opened door just as Clare is standing in the narrow hallway of her past. Holden sees an opening, and he believes the chaos surrounding Clare creates space for him to step in. He thinks her sharp boundaries, her refusal to apologize, her visible break from Kyle can only improve his chances of flirting his way into her life. Not because he takes pleasure in her pain, but because he recognizes something deeply human when someone has just been betrayed. They often want to prove they still have agency, still have choices, still have the right to move forward and be wanted. Holden places his hope in that moment. He believes that if he shows up as someone who listens, someone who respects her, someone who makes her feel prioritized, Clare will naturally lean toward him. That is why Holden proposes a real date and hopes she will spend New Year's Eve with him. As if the holiday is the perfect marker for a fresh start, a clean page. A softer version of Clare's story. But Clare is not the kind of woman who can be pulled forward by promises alone. She agrees, yet she agrees in a way Holden cannot easily read. Her condition is not a superficial rule, it is a boundary built from blood and experience. Clare knows something about people like herself, people who have survived manipulation, have a very specific vulnerability, they crave safety. And that craving can tempt them to ignore red flags just to believe this time will be different. So she sets her boundary before stepping into this new situation as a test. If Holden truly respects her, he will follow her rule. If he responds by dodging, pushing, minimizing, or turning her boundary into a joke, Clare will know she is facing a new version of the same old trap. The cruel twist is that what makes the situation tense is not Clare's vigilance, but the darkness sitting inside Holden's silence. Holden is hiding a secret tied to a murder case in Los Angeles, and that secret turns honesty into something almost impossible. A man carrying a deadly secret cannot enter a new beginning with clean hands, because any question can touch the weak spot. Any intimacy can tighten the pressure until a lie slips. That creates a dangerous contradiction. The more Clare demands clarity, the more Holden is forced to choose between respecting her boundary and protecting what he has buried. In Clare's world, that choice is no longer a small detail. It is evidence. It is a sign of whether she is facing a man who could become shelter of the next storm. Genoa City's atmosphere thickens because of it, as if everything is waiting for a single touch to shatter. Clare stands at the edge of the new year with a wounded heart that refuses to be careless. With eyes trained to see through the pretty packaging of excuses, she feels no regret for what she did to Audra, no shame for protecting herself, and no patience for anyone who wants to reduce her life to strategy. At the same time, she does not want to become a woman made entirely of walls. A woman who only suspects, only refuses, only denies herself happiness. So her decision to spend New Year's Eve with Holden is also a challenge she gives herself. Can she open her heart without betraying herself? Can she step toward a new future while keeping her boundaries intact? Holden, meanwhile, walks into the date with a quiet calculation. He wants to use the moment Clare is breaking away from Kyle to become the one she chooses next. He is drawn to Clare's strength, to the way she refuses to fold, to the way she demands limits. But that strength is also what makes Holden's situation dangerous. Because Clare will not trust easily, forget easily, or forgive easily. And when a man with a deadly secret draws close to a woman who survived manipulation, every small inconsistency becomes a spotlight. Holden may believe that if he is patient enough, gentle enough, perfectly timed, Clare will give him a chance. What he may be underestimating is that Clare is not only testing him, she is testing herself. And she has already decided that if she recognizes anything that resembles her past, she will not hesitate to walk away. New Year's Eve becomes more than a countdown. It becomes a time trap. Every minute that passes shortens the distance between Holden's lie and the truth he is hiding. Clare steps into the night holding her rule like a key, believing it will either unlock respect or slam shut the door to danger. Holden steps into the night carrying Los Angeles like a stone in his pocket, heavy enough that one well-placed question could steal his breath. Between them hangs the shadow of Kyle Abbott and Audra Charles, the fresh wound, the humiliating idea that betrayal can be called tactic, the memory that Clare refuses to replay. So when the lights of midnight prepare to flare, The question is no longer whether Clare should give Holden a chance, but what Holden will do when Clare's boundary presses directly against his deadly secret, and whether Clare will realize in time that sometimes the gentlest invitation can be hiding the most dangerous truth. On our YouTube channel, TV Spoilers, I'm always looking for content inspiration for each video by compiling short video clips to analyze and offer my personal opinions. This channel specializes in analyzing, theorizing, and discussing plot points in the Young and the Restless series from the perspective of a longtime fan. Through this, viewers can gain deeper, more objective, and more interesting insights. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the latest news about the Young and the Restless series.